The savings account was almost empty. After 38 years of marriage, I found myself sitting alone at our kitchen table in Tucson, Arizona, staring at numbers that didn't add up. I was 67 years old, and for the first time since I was 24, I needed to figure out how to survive on my own. My husband Harold had handled everything: the bills, the investments, the planning, and then one Tuesday morning, he was gone. Heart attack in the driveway, car keys still in his hand. The pension was smaller than I expected, much smaller. Turns out Harold had made some bad decisions in those final years, decisions he never told me about. So I did what I had to do. I found a job. That's how I ended up working the evening shift at Sunrise Senior Living, a nursing home on the east side of Tucson. 3 nights a week, I worked the front desk from 4 p.m. to midnight, checking in visitors, answering phones, making sure the night staff had what they needed. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my mind busy, kept me from sitting in that empty house, listening to the silence where Harold's voice used to be. The problem was getting home. My daughter had moved to Seattle years ago, and I'd let my driver's license lapse when my eyesight started going. Harold had always driven us everywhere. Now Harold was gone, and the bus didn't run past 10 p.m. in my part of town. My granddaughter Melissa set me up with one of those rideshare apps during her last visit. Showed me how to request a car, how to tip through the phone. I felt foolish at first, like the world had moved on without me. But necessity is a powerful teacher. That's how I met Eleanor. The first time her dusty blue Honda pulled up to the nursing home's side entrance, I hesitated. The driver was a woman about my age, maybe a few years younger, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her rating was 4.98 stars. In a town full of young people driving for extra cash, seeing someone who looked like me behind the wheel was oddly comforting. "Long night?" she asked as I settled into the back seat. "Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday," I replied. I gave her my address on Cactus Wren Lane. She nodded, pulling out of the parking lot with the careful precision of someone who'd been driving these streets for decades. I watched the familiar landscape of Tucson pass by the window, the saguaros standing like sentinels in the moonlight, the distant glow of the city against the desert sky. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "About 4 years now, since my husband's medical bills ate through everything we'd saved." Something in her voice made me look up. Really look at her. She had the same tired eyes I saw in my own mirror every morning. The look of someone who'd learned that life doesn't care about your plans. "I'm sorry," I said. She shrugged, but I saw her grip tighten on the steering wheel. "He passed 2 years ago. Now it's just me and the road." She paused. "I'm Eleanor, by the way." "Margaret," I replied. "But everyone calls me Maggie." After that first ride, something strange started happening. 3 nights a week, I'd request a car, and 3 nights a week, Eleanor's blue Honda would be the one that showed up. By the 3rd week, I realized it wasn't coincidence. She was timing her availability, positioning herself near the nursing home around 11:45, making sure she'd be the one to pick me up. I should have found it odd. Instead, I found it comforting. We fell into a routine. I'd slide into the back seat, exhausted from 8 hours of phone calls and worried families and the particular heartbreak that lives in the hallways of a nursing home, and Eleanor would already have my address plugged in. We'd talk during the 15-minute drive to my house. Small things at first, the weather, the traffic, the way Tucson had changed since we were young. But gradually, the conversations deepened. I learned that Eleanor's husband Marcus had died of cancer, a slow and expensive death that had drained their retirement accounts and left her with a mountain of debt. She'd sold their house, moved into a small apartment near the highway, and started driving for the rideshare company 6 days a week, sometimes 10 hours a day. "My son moved to Chicago 3 years ago," she told me one November night, her voice catching. "He calls on Sundays, but it's not the same. I have a grandson I've only met twice. He's 4 years old, and I'm a stranger to him." Without thinking, I reached forward and squeezed her shoulder. "I know how that feels. My daughter's in Seattle. I see my granddaughter maybe once a year." Eleanor cleared her throat. "It's the distance that kills you, isn't it? Not the miles. The feeling that life is happening somewhere else, and you're just waiting." I started tipping her extra after that. Not much, Just a few dollars more than usual, but enough that she'd notice. She tried to refuse at first, said I didn't need to do that. "You're keeping an old woman safe," I told her. "That's worth something." The truth was, those 3 rides a week had become the highlight of my lonely routine. Eleanor never pitied me, never treated me like a burden. She just listened when I needed to talk and stayed quiet when I needed silence. She understood without me having to explain. In December, I started bringing her coffee. The nursing home had a little cafe in the lobby, run by volunteers. The coffee wasn't great, but it was hot and fresh at midnight when my shift ended. The first time I handed Eleanor a cup through the car window, she stared at it like I'd given her something precious. "Maggie, you didn't have to do this." "I know," I replied, "but the nights are cold, and I figured we could both use something warm." After that, the coffee became part of our ritual. I'd climb into the front seat now, not the back, and we'd drive through the quiet Tucson streets, sipping our drinks and talking about everything and nothing. She told me about the strange passengers she'd picked up, the drunk college kids, the crying women, the businessmen who talked on their phones like she wasn't there. I told her about the residents at Sunrise, the ones who still had their minds but not their bodies, the ones who'd forgotten everything but still smiled when you held their hands. "You're good at your job," Eleanor said one night in late December. "I can tell by the way you talk about them. You actually care." I felt tears prick my eyes. "So do you." It was a Friday night, January 8th, when everything changed. Eleanor picked me up as usual, but something was different. Her hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, and she kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Not in her usual friendly way, but with an intensity that made my stomach clench. "Maggie," she said as she pulled away from the nursing home, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm." My throat went dry. "What's wrong?" "Your neighbor, the woman who lives 2 houses down from you. Tan stucco, red door, drives a white SUV. Do you know her?" I blinked, confused. "Sandra Kovacs? She moved in about a year ago. We wave sometimes, but I don't really know her. Why?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She turned left instead of right, heading away from my street. "Eleanor, where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk." Her voice was tight. "Maggie, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. You're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry. But you need to hear this." She pulled into the empty parking lot of a closed Walgreens, put the car in park, and turned to face me. In the harsh glow of the lot's security lights, her face looked haggard, older than I'd ever seen her. "I picked up Sandra Kovacs last Tuesday night," Eleanor said. "She was coming from a bar downtown, very drunk, talking on her phone the whole ride. At first, I tried not to listen. Professional courtesy. But then I heard her mention your address. Your exact address, Maggie. And she was angry. I don't understand." These were her exact words. She said, "The old woman at 2847 Cactus Ren is getting suspicious. She watches everything. We need to move faster before she figures it out." The world tilted. "What?" "There's more." Eleanor pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly. I started paying attention after that. Old habit from when I worked dispatch for the Tucson Police Department. I kept notes. That woman, Sandra Kovacs, I've picked her up 4 times in the last 3 weeks. Always late at night, always drunk, always on her phone having these intense conversations. She swiped through her phone, showing me a list of times and dates logged in a notes app. "Last night," Eleanor continued, "I picked her up again. She was talking about you again, Maggie. She said, 'The nursing home woman works Monday, Wednesday, Friday. House is empty those nights. I've checked.'" Ice flooded my veins. "She's been watching my house?" "I think so. And I think there's more going on than just watching. 2 nights ago, I drove past your street on my way home. I saw her car parked across from your house at 1 a.m., just sitting there, engine off, watching. Why would she—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I don't know. But Maggie, there's something else." Eleanor's face was grim. "Last night, after I dropped her off, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I followed her, not close, just far enough to see where she went. And she didn't go home. She drove to a storage unit facility on the south side of town, spent about an hour there. When she came out, She was carrying boxes. I couldn't see what was in them. But Maggie, she was talking on her phone again, and I heard her say something about the next shipment, and the old people don't even notice. My mind raced. Old people, nursing home, watching my house. Oh God, I whispered. What is it? The medications. I gripped Eleanor's arm. 3 weeks ago, we had an audit at Sunrise. The pharmacy noticed discrepancies. Controlled substances were being signed out, but not all of them were reaching the residents. Oxycodone, fentanyl patches, things with street value. They thought it was a counting error at first. Eleanor's eyes widened. And now? Now I think someone's been stealing them. And I felt sick. Sandra started volunteering at Sunrise about 6 months ago. She comes in twice a week, reads to the residents, helps with activities. She has access to the medication carts when the nurses are busy. I've seen her in the hallways. Does she know you're on the audit team? I'm not exactly on the team, but I file the incident reports. I see everything that comes through the front desk. And last week, I mentioned to one of the nurses that the numbers didn't add up. I said it right in the hallway. Anyone could have heard. Eleanor started the car. We're going to the police. Now. It's almost 1 a.m. Maggie, this woman knows your schedule. She knows when your house is empty, and she thinks you're getting suspicious. What do you think she's planning? I sat there in that empty parking lot, my whole world spinning. A woman I'd waved to pleasantly for the past year had apparently been stealing medications from vulnerable elderly people, and the only reason I knew was because of a rideshare driver who happened to pay attention. 25 minutes later, we were sitting in the Tucson Police Department. A young officer took our statement, while an older detective listened with increasing interest. I told them about my routine, about barely knowing Sandra Kovacs, about the medication discrepancies at Sunrise. Eleanor pulled up her detailed logs, every ride, every fragment of conversation she'd documented. "And you're certain she said the old woman is getting suspicious?" the detective asked, his gray eyebrows furrowed. "Positive," Eleanor replied. I started recording the rides after the second time, audio only, for my own protection. Passengers consent when they accept the ride. It's in the app's terms of service. I can play them for you. The detective's eyes sharpened. "You have recordings?" "Yes, sir." He pulled out a laptop, and Eleanor transferred the audio files. We sat there in that sterile interview room, listening to Sandra Kovacs' slurred voice, talking about me, about my house, about moving faster before I figured it out. The detective's face grew grimmer with each recording. "Mrs. Maggie," he said when the last file finished, "did you ever meet with Sandra Kovacs outside of the nursing home? Any interactions that seemed unusual?" I thought back. Once. About 3 weeks ago, she stopped by my house. Said she was collecting donations for the residents' activity fund. I gave her $20. Did she come inside? My blood ran cold. Yes, for maybe 5 minutes. She asked to use the bathroom. The detective exchanged a glance with the younger officer. That's when she would have scoped out your house, seen what you have, how you live, whether you live alone. "I live alone," I whispered. The detective stood up. "We're going to contact the DEA. If this is what I think it is, it's not just theft. It's a drug diversion ring, and she's using her volunteer access to steal controlled substances from a nursing home. And if she thinks you're a threat to her operation." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "Mrs. Maggie, you're not going home tonight. We'll put you in a hotel under protective watch. And ma'am," he nodded at Eleanor, "thank you. Your documentation may have just cracked open a major case." Everything happened quickly after that. The detective made phone calls. Another officer drove me to a hotel while Eleanor stayed to give additional statements. I sat in that generic hotel room, curtains drawn, unable to sleep, jumping at every sound in the hallway. My phone rang at 6 a.m. The detective. "We executed a search warrant on the storage unit," he said without preamble. "We found over $200,000 worth of stolen medications, oxycodone, fentanyl, hydrocodone. She's been stealing from Sunrise for at least 8 months, selling to a distributor who was moving them across state lines." I sat down hard on the hotel bed. "That's not all. We searched her house too. Found a notebook with your daily schedule written out. What time you leave for work, what time you come home, Which doors you use. She was planning something, Mrs. Maggie. We're not sure what yet, but she was planning something. Is she in custody? Arrested 2 hours ago. She's facing federal drug trafficking charges, theft, stalking. She won't be getting out for a long time. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. A woman who had sat in my living room, used my bathroom, smiled at me in the nursing home hallways, had been planning to do something to me. Because I was an obstacle to her operation, Eleanor picked me up from the hotel that morning. No fare, no app request. She just showed up because somehow she knew I'd need a familiar face. We drove through Tucson in the early morning light, neither of us speaking for a long time. The saguaros cast long shadows across the desert, and the sky was that particular shade of pink that only Arizona mornings can produce. "How did you know?" I finally asked. "How did you know to pay attention?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment, her hands steady on the wheel. "My daughter," she said finally. "Before Marcus died, before everything fell apart, my daughter had a neighbor. Nice woman, everyone thought. Friendly, helpful, always offering to watch the kids. I watched her face. She was stealing from them," Eleanor continued, her voice thick. "Little things at first, mail, packages. Then she got a copy of their house key somehow. Started taking bigger things when they were at work. By the time my daughter figured it out, the woman had stolen over $10,000 worth of stuff and taken out 2 credit cards in my daughter's name. Identity theft, burglary, the whole thing. Eleanor, I'm so sorry." The police said they should have paid attention to the signs. The woman had been watching them for months, learning their schedule, testing their boundaries. My daughter blamed herself for not noticing. Eleanor's voice cracked. "I blamed myself, too. I'd met that woman. I'd thought she seemed nice. I never even questioned it. So now you pay attention." "So now I pay attention," she confirmed. "I listen when drunk people talk. I notice when someone mentions the same address multiple times, when they talk about watching someone, timing someone, because my family was hurt once by someone we trusted, and I won't let that happen to someone else if I can help it." Tears streamed down my face. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first," Eleanor replied quietly. "You treated me like a person, Maggie. Not just a service, not just a way to get from one place to another. You brought me coffee and asked about my day. Do you know how rare that is? Most passengers don't even look at me. They're on their phones, or they're staring out the window, or they're pretending I don't exist. But you saw me. You talked to me like I mattered. You do matter. So do you. That's why I noticed when something seemed wrong. Because you'd made me care." We pulled up to my house on Cactus Wren Lane. In the morning light, it looked ordinary, peaceful. The desert landscaping that Harold and I had planted together, the wind chimes my granddaughter had given me for my birthday, but I knew I'd never feel quite the same way about it again. 2 houses down, police tape cordoned off the tan stucco house with the red door. "Maggie," Eleanor said as I gathered my things, "I want you to have my personal number. Not the app, my actual cell phone. You call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything." I took the card she handed me. "I will. And Eleanor, thank you for everything." "Thank you," she replied, and I saw her eyes were wet, for reminding me that this job can still mean something. The investigation took weeks. They uncovered Sandra's entire operation, how she'd been systematically stealing medications for months, building relationships with residents to gain trust, using her volunteer access to slip into medication rooms during shift changes. The distributor she'd been selling to was connected to a larger network that moved drugs across 3 states. My role in the audit had indeed put me on her radar. She'd heard me talking in the hallway about the numbers not adding up, and she'd started watching me. The notebook they found at her house detailed everything: my work schedule, my habits, the fact that I lived alone, which windows didn't have curtains. She'd been planning to break in and search my house for any evidence I might have copied. And if I'd caught her in the act, I testified at her trial. Eleanor testified too, her detailed logs and audio recordings becoming key evidence. Sandra Kovacs was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, theft, and stalking. Through it all, Eleanor kept driving me to work and back, 3 nights a week. But now I sat in the front seat, and we were no longer just driver and passenger. We were friends, bonded by circumstance, and the choices we'd both made to show up for another human being. 4 months after Sandra's arrest, Eleanor's son called her. He'd read about the case online, seen his mother's name in the news. The way she'd protected a stranger, paid attention when it mattered, it had made him think. "He wants me to come to Chicago," Eleanor told me one Wednesday night, her voice breaking with joy. "He said his son needs his grandmother in his life. He asked if I'd consider moving closer." "What did you say?" "I said I needed to think about it." She paused. "I said I had a friend in Tucson I couldn't leave behind." My heart clenched. "Eleanor, you have to go. This is your family. Your grandson." "I know." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "But I'm not leaving without making sure you're okay first. And I was thinking maybe you'd consider visiting? Seattle isn't that far from Chicago. Maybe your daughter and granddaughter could meet us there sometime. A grandmother's reunion." I laughed through my tears. "I'd like that." She moved to Chicago in June. But true to her word, she didn't leave me behind. We talk every week now, video calls where she shows me her grandson's latest artwork, and I show her the flowers blooming in my desert garden. My daughter flew me to Seattle for Thanksgiving, and we all met up in San Francisco for what we called our Grandmother's Summit. 4 generations, 2 families that had become one, all because of coffee and conversation and the choice to see each other as human beings. I'm 68 now, still working 3 nights a week at Sunrise Senior Living. But I'm not lonely anymore. I have Eleanor, even if she's 1,500 miles away. I have my daughter, who calls more often now. I have a new volunteer at the nursing home, a young woman named Jessica who reminds me of myself at that age, eager to help, but uncertain about her place in the world. Last week, she confided that she was going through a divorce, that she felt invisible, like no one saw her anymore. So I brought her coffee the next day, sat with her during her break, told her it would get easier, even when it felt impossible. "Thank you," she whispered, looking at me with such gratitude. "You have no idea how much this means." But I do. I know exactly what small kindnesses can mean. I know how a moment of seeing someone, really seeing them, can change everything. Because I gave a rideshare driver coffee and conversation, she was paying attention the night it mattered most. And because she was paying attention, we both found our way back to the living. Both found our way to becoming people who mattered to each other. If you're watching this, wherever you are, I want you to remember something. That person who serves you coffee, who drives you home, who checks you in at the front desk, they're not invisible. They're fighting battles you know nothing about. And that small gesture, that moment of genuine human connection, might be the thing that saves them. Or it might be the thing that saves you.